Okay, let's settle down. Everybody have a good lunch? Yes, best part of the day, right? I shut off for an hour. So picking back up here where we left off in chapter 3. Remember, this chapter is all about encumbrances or limitations on your ownership. Things that limit your ownership or what you can do with property that you own. There's probably no better example of a limitation on your property than something called an easement. An easement is the right of one person to use property that does not belong to them. It's the right of someone to use someone else's property. Think about that. That's a big statement. We're talking about property that somebody does not own, but they have the right to use, and they're not paying for that right. There's no rent being exchanged here. If you need paper towels, that closet, there should be some in there. Is that what you need? Yeah, it should be a roll of paper towels in there. You're welcome. So it's the right to use property that does not belong to you. I mean, normally what do we call that when you occupy or use somebody's property that doesn't belong to you? Trespassing, right? I mean, it's not yours. But this is a legal right to be somewhere permanently, in most cases, even though you don't own it. And the key thing here is most of the time, the owner of the property is the one who gave you that right. The difference is they can't take it back. Because an owner can always give you right to be on their property, can they not? Can someone give you permission? Yes. What's the key thing about permission, though? If they give you permission, they can always do what? They can take it back. They can take the permission away. An easement is permanent permission to be there. It's the legal right to permanently use a portion of someone else's property. So I'm going to use this room to help with a visual demonstration about easements as we talk about these things. So I want you to bear with me for a second. I want you to imagine that this room was once one piece of land. Okay, so one large piece of land. And at some point, the owner of that piece of land subdivided it. What does that mean when you subdivide something? What are we doing? We're dividing it up into smaller pieces. And most likely, why does an owner subdivide property that they own? What's the most likely reason for doing that? To sell it. They want to sell off one or maybe all of the lots that result. But most of the time, that's the biggest motivation for subdividing. So we're just going to use the aisles as sort of our property lines. Is everybody okay with that? So I want you to imagine that we have this property, and it used to be one large piece of land. And we have now, I'm the owner of the property, and I've just subdivided it off. I put a line right here, from the back of the room to the front. This is lot number 1. Everybody good with that? And I'm going to sell lot number 1 to Jocelyn, since she's right here on the front corner. This is Jocelyn's lot. Right here is lot number 2. So we've got a property line there. We've got a property line right here, down this divide. Everybody good with that? And that's going to be Maggie's lot. Okay, I've sold that lot to Maggie. Right here is lot number 3. The property line goes all the way from the back of the room down that aisle to back of the room down this aisle, front of the room. That's lot number 3. And we'll say Karen owns lot number 3. And then finally, Brianna owns lot number 4 over here. Is everybody with me so far? So let's talk about one of the first issues we're going to have as a result of subdividing this property. How did you come in? Here's the highway. Here's the street. Here's the road. Matter of fact, there's 2 entrances onto the property. One there and one here. That works really well for lot number what? 1. Jocelyn's got no problems. What about lot numbers 2, 3, and 4? That's a closet. 4 ain't going nowhere. What? Do you see a problem? They need what? They need access. The only way, folks, we can give those lots access to that road is if the people who own those lots are allowed to travel across what lot? Lot number 1. See, lot number 1 is the gateway. Does that make sense? So for anybody, Maggie, who owns lot number 2, for Maggie to get in her car and go to work, whose lot does she have to drive across? Jocelyn's. Lot number 1. Are you following me on that? Now here's the thing. We would not expect Maggie to do that every morning and risk getting shot at. As a matter of fact, when we create lot number 2, hopefully somebody is going to notice the problem before we even create it. Would you like to think that when we draw out that subdivision, somebody at the county courthouse, when we go down there to record that map, is going to say, hey, dummy, they don't have a helicopter. They need access to the road. Are you following me on this?
Yeah.
Okay? So, remember, this all used to be one piece of property. When was the problem created? When we did what? Subdivided. So when did you think the right to use lot number 1 is also going to get created? When we draw the subdivision. Are you following me so far? So what we're going to do is draw what we call an easement on lot number 1. Everybody follow me? Now I'm going to talk about the different kinds of easements in a second, but I want you to understand the basic process here. We're going to draw an easement on lot number 1. And we said an easement is the right to do what? Use property that does not what? Belong to you. So whose property is the easement on? Jocelyn's property. Is Jocelyn actually benefiting from the easement though? No. Who's actually benefiting from the easement? Lot number what? 2 is benefiting from the easement. Does that make sense? Do we have the same problem for lot number 3? We do. So what are we going to have to do for lot number 3? We need to create an easement where? We don't need another one there. There's already one there. Anybody who has the right to use this property has the right to use this easement, right? So how do we give the people on lot number 3 the right to use not only this, but that? We just got to give them the right to use what? 2. Because if they have the right to use 2, because 2 has the right to do what? Use 1, don't they have the right to use all of it? Does that make sense? Well, hold on to that thought for just a second. Okay? Everybody follow me? Now, do we have an even bigger problem for lot number 4?
Yeah.
Lot number 4 is even further back. Where does lot number 4 need an easement?
3.
To access lot number 3. Because once the person who is coming from lot number 4 is on lot number 3, they have the right to do what? Access lot number 2, because lot 3 has access to lot number 2. And once they're on lot 2, they have the right to access what? Lot 1, because lot 2 has the right to access lot 1. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Now let me ask you the question in reverse. Brianna, she owns lot number 4. How many of these properties does she legally have the right to access? All 4 of them. Because that's the only way she can actually make it out. Does that make sense? How many properties does Karen, who owns lot number 3, have the right to access? 3. Because Karen cannot go on to lot. As a matter of fact, who can go on to lot number 4? Just Brianna, because what's not on lot number 4? There's no easement over here. Does that make sense? Because there's no reason to have an easement over here. There's no need for somebody else to need the legal right to access Brianna's property. Does everybody follow me on that? Yes, sir. Mike.
You were going to share your vote.
Well, if she wanted to, she could give an easement. But for, in this purpose, there's no reason for it. Everybody good? Now, How many properties does Maggie have the right to access? 2 of them, her own plus lot number 1. How many properties does Jocelyn, as the owner of lot number 1, have the legal right to access? 1. How many other people have the right to access hers?
3.
All of them, right?
I wouldn't have access over there.
No, ma'am. No, ma'am. This is not a two-way street. Because easements are an aggressive relationship. Easements like this have a dominant property and a servient property. In the case of the easement located right here, which property is servient? Which property is serving the other? Lot number 1 or lot number 2? Number 1. And which one is dominating the relationship?
2.
Lot number 2. For that easement, right? For this easement right here, which one is the servient property?
2.
Lot 2, which one is the dominant property? Lot 3 is the dominant property. For this easement right here, which one is the servient property? Lot 3, and which one is the dominant? Lot 4. What is Lot 4 servient to? Nothing. What is Lot 1 dominant over? Nothing. So Lot 1 is completely servient. Lot 4 is completely what? Dominant. Let me see how those words work. Who would you expect to be taken advantage of in the relationship? The servient or the dominant? The servient gets taken advantage of. Let me tell you exactly how they get taken advantage of. Brianna, did you notice all those potholes over there when you drove in this afternoon? It's terrible, isn't it? So Brianna goes and knocks on Jocelyn's door and says, hey, there's potholes out here in your driveway. And Jocelyn says, well, okay, let me get everybody together and so we can all go in and split that 4 ways and get it fixed. And Brianna says, excuse me? It's not my driveway. And Jocelyn says, but you use it, and you know what Brianna says? You're right. And I'm going to keep using it. And you're going to keep fixing it. Because I'm dominant and you're what? Servient. So whose responsibility is maintenance of the easement? The property owner. Who gets to enjoy the servient property gets used? Who gets to enjoy all the benefits of the easement? The dominant tenement does. Does that make sense for you guys? Everybody sort of understand that terminology and how it works now? Where is the easement located? On the servient or the dominant? The easement's on the servient. Okay? Yes, sir.
So are they required to maintain the driveway, like to the standards of the dominant property?
Well, that gets into a whole lot of, you know, you would want to, if you were smart when you were drafting such an easement, you'd also draft like a maintenance agreement and all kinds of things, because otherwise the natural conclusion is you're going to have difficulties with that.
Right.
And you'd end up in a court of law with one suing the other, and nobody wants to end up there. So in the case of, by the way, we call that a shared driveway, right? Have y'all ever heard of a shared driveway? That's the way they work. Do you understand right now, just based on what I just explained, why a lender would be reluctant to give a loan on lot number 3? Because access to lot number 3 is dependent on what? On 2 other people maintaining and providing that access all the time. So is there some risk that at some point these people just become stupid and try to block you out? Yeah, it's a risky thing. These are not good in a lot of situations, but they are necessary. Now, are you understanding me? Now, they don't have to just be shared driveways. Any right to use someone else's property is called an easement. Are you good so far with this? Okay. So, the type of easement that I've been describing here is called an appurtenant easement. To answer Michael's question, not all easements are appurtenant, but that type of easement is appurtenant. Anytime you have both a servient and a dominant property, you have what we call an appurtenant easement. And since it is appurtenant, how long does it last? Forever. Notice I said there's a servient and a dominant. How many properties is that? two of them. Appurtenant easements always involve two pieces of property. What do you notice about their geography? What's the relationship to one another? They're always what? Side by side. They have to be side by side. They have to share a boundary to have an appurtenant easement. One of them is going to be dominant, one's going to be servient. Where is the easement actually located? It's on the servient. We feel pretty good about that so far. Okay? Now the last bullet point, it says right here, it says easements have to be recorded in order to be enforceable. Where would you record an easement? At the county courthouse. Why do you think the law requires an easement be recorded to be enforceable? Here's what enforceable means. It means a court of law in North Carolina would back it up. It means if one sued the other. So in other words, if Jocelyn told Maggie, no, you can't drive across my property anymore, what is Maggie's recourse? To do what? To sue her. And the only way a court of law in North Carolina is going to back up Maggie's claim is if that easement is what? Recorded. That's what enforceability means. Is everybody following me on that? So the only way, so could Maggie have an easement and the court say, no, we're not enforcing it? Sure, if she didn't do what with it? Record it. So if you want that easement to be enforceable, you better go and record it. Why? What is the point of doing that? Think about a sales transaction. These are appurtenant. How long do they last? So who needs to know about them? The future owners. If I'm buying that property, from Jocelyn, it's going to be important information to me to know that there's an easement across it for a shared driveway. Does everybody follow that? And that's why they have to be recorded in order to be enforceable so the public knows. Yes, ma'am, Jim.
Is that the Connor Act?
That is according to the Connor Act. We haven't talked about the Connor Act yet, but there's a law called the Connor Act in North Carolina, and you don't need to write that down yet. We'll get there. That says certain legal agreements are only enforceable if they are recorded. And the Connor Act applies to easements. It says for easements to be enforceable, they must be recorded. Yes, ma'am, Doc.
In this case, was I the owner, and am I the one that subdivided, or could it be four individual people that still would be acting as this lot number one?
No, I subdivided and sold you lot number one.
And you sold lot number two?
I sold lot number two to Maggie. I sold lot number, and so who created all the easements? I did. Because the only way anybody was going to be willing to buy lot number two from me is if they had what? An easement to provide them access. So when you bought lot number one from me, you bought it knowing that forevermore, not only you, but everybody you sold the property to would have to do what? Provide access across your property to somebody else.
That means for lots of will be higher than my price.
Does that mean her price is going to be higher than your price? Think about what you just asked. What's the least desirable property in the whole string right now? Lot number one. She got a parade going on in front of her house in her front yard every day. What's the most desirable property in the string? Brianna over there. See, at the beginning you thought, man, her lot sucks. Meanwhile, she's out there watering her pretty lawn in the area where the rest of y'all got easements as everybody's driving across. That make sense? Mm-hmm. Yes, ma'am. Who would have to record it? Well, there's no answer to that. Anybody could record it. Who would want to is the important question. Who would want to record the easement? The dominant tenement would. Who would hope it never got recorded? The servient. If you're the servient one, you hope nobody knows, right? Because if they don't record it, it can't be what? Enforced. So whose benefit would it be to record it? It would be whoever owned the dominant tenement. Does that make sense? See, recording, nobody's ever going to twist your arm and say you have to record it. We say you have to record it if you want to be enforceable. So the question is, who would want it to be enforceable? There'll be lots of documents like that. Deeds are like that. We say, well, you have to record a deed if you want it to be enforceable. And so people will say to me, well, who records the deed, the buyer or the seller? Let me ask you a question. Does the seller give a crap if the deed gets recorded or not? No, they got their money, they're gone. Whose benefit is it to record the deed? The buyer. There's no rule about who has to do it, it's about who benefits from it. Does that make sense? Okay, good. Good. We're understanding this so far. Okay? That's called an appurtenant easement. Yes, sir, Chris?
As an appraiser, we actually do it the exact opposite value-wise. Because that lot has road frontage.
Right.
Has public road frontage. And usually the lots aren't right next to it, they're on 5-6 acres.
Right.
It's just a little gravel driveway that's making its way through 5 acres.
Right.
So that's actually, when we appraise stuff, that's actually the least value, and that's more valuable.
Right, but from the standpoint of encumbrances, I hope you can understand why we present it that way, because the most encumbered lot of the bunch is that one right there. And that's the one that's going to have the most strings attached to it. So, okay, everybody good? Now, that's a terrible drawing of an appurtenant easement, but you get the idea. All right, that shared driveway. The other type of easement is called an easement in gross. Now, how long did we say an appurtenant easement would last? Forever. So here's what that means. Let me ask you a question. Is it really Maggie that gets the benefit of the easement on lot number 1, or is it Maggie's property that gets the benefit of the easement on lot number 1? It's the property. And here's how you know it's the property, because if Maggie sells the property, the benefit stays where? With the property. The benefit's going to go to the next owner. If she sells the property to Tommy, then Tommy's going to get the benefit of the easement. And if Tommy sells the property to Adrienne, then Adrienne's going to have the benefit of the easement. Does that make sense for everybody? So the benefit belongs to the property in an appurtenant easement. In an easement in gross, the benefit doesn't belong to the property. It belongs to a person or a company. The benefit or the access belong, not the land, but the access, the benefit, the easement belongs to a person or a property. So we still got our 4 lots here. I always need props. I can teach you out props. So let's talk about an appurtenant easement. I can never find the end of a drop board. Alright. An easement in gross. An easement in gross. Does Brianna need electricity? Now, where are the power lines in most cases? Underground. I grew up in the country. Where are they in the country? In the air where? On poles. Where are the poles? Along the what? The road. Where's the power coming from to get to Brianna's lot?
The road.
Out there, right? It's got to get there. Does Duke Power not need some form of legal access to provide electricity all the way back to lot number 4? Does that make sense? Because whether they put those lines that feed Brianna's property in the air or in the ground, aren't they accessing? Am I not, if I'm Duke Power and I've laid this cable down, whether I hung it in the air or put it in the ground, have I not accessed Maggie's property? Because she owns the surface, she owns everything above and everything what? Below. So there's no way I could possibly run power all the way back to that back lot without having a what across Maggie's property? An easement. And I also need an easement across whose? Across Karen's lot number 3. And I also, in this case, still need an easement across Brianna's property, because here's the thing. Remember, an easement is the right to access somebody else's property. If I didn't have an easement as Duke Power to access her property, where would I have to stop the power line? Right, the property line. Well, that didn't do her any good in her house. She needs power all the way up to the house, right? So I need an easement not only across those, but I need an easement across hers as well. Because what happens if that power line breaks and we need to get on her property to fix it? Don't we need legal access to get there? Are you following me on this? Now, who benefits from this easement? Who, when I say benefit, I'm talking about who has the legal right. What is an easement? The legal right to what? To use property that does not belong to you. Who benefits from this easement? Duke Power does. When Duke Power is the beneficiary, see, the beneficiary is not a piece of property. Because if Maggie sells her property, guess who's still the beneficiary of the easement? Duke Power. If Karen sells her property, guess who's still the beneficiary of the easement? Duke Power. You notice what doesn't change? The beneficiary stays the same in an easement and grows. Here's the interesting thing about an easement and grows. How long did I say an appurtenant easement was going to last? Forever. This one's not going to. It'll last a very long time. Some might even say a hell of a long time. But a hell of a long time is not forever. Who's the beneficiary of this easement? Let me put it this way. You know why an appurtenant easement lasts forever? It goes with the land, and the land lasts for how long? Forever. The beneficiary is a piece of land, and the beneficiary is going to live forever in an appurtenant easement. Who did I say the beneficiary was in an easement and grows? The individual or company. So how long do you think the easement's going to last? As long as the beneficiary lasts. As long as the individual or company lasts. So how long is this easement right here, this utility easement, which is the type of easement and grows, how long is that easement going to be in existence? As long as Duke Power is in existence. And here's the thing. This easement right here, an easement is the right to use someone else's property, correct? We seem to understand that. Oh yeah, they have the right to bury that across my land. Do they have the right to come dig it up?
Yeah.
Yes, they do. What part of use have you not grasped yet? Do they have the power to come dig it up? Yes. Do they have to ask your permission? No. They have the legal right. So let's say this is across your backyard. And you put up a pretty fence. And the power is out in the neighborhood. And they think that break may be somewhere in the line under your backyard. What are they going to do? And they have every legal right to do so. Drive right over it. Because you have fenced them out of their legal right. See, you thought you put up a fence around your yard, and you did. But they have the legal right to do what? Access it, to use it. And you fenced them out of it, and they have every legal right to tear it down to get access to it. Does that make sense to you guys? So, people ask us all the time. They'll look at their map of their property and say, well, I have this easement. Can I put a fence there? What's the answer? You can, but you always run the risk that the easement holder has the right to do what? Take it down if they need access.
Say you put your fence on your property line and the easement starts after. Is there a certain portion that's there?
So you're already wrong right there. Because you haven't grasped the idea of an easement. Where is the easement?
Anywhere they want them?
No, it's on your property. See, it's not your property line and then the easement. The easement is your property. It is the right to use your property. So you can very well put your fence on your property, but if it's still the easement, they have the right to do what? To use it.
For example, where I live, there is an easement in the other side of what I call the fence is. So that fence can come down any moment.
If the fence is located in the easement, absolutely.
Okay, that's what I think it's continuous because in my understanding, the fence is on the property in the house, the easement's after it, but no.
Well, then the easement's not on that property. See, there's not fence and then easement. There's not property and then easement. And easement is the right to do what? Use somebody else's property. The easement is on someone else's property. So you are thinking of them as two separate things. They are not. An easement is located on someone else's property. what are you talking about? Are there power lines back there? Is that what you're talking about?
Right behind that, I live,
Mm-hmm.
right behind the backyard is an area that's wooded, and that's the easement for what I understand.
So that's still their property.
Yeah.
And it is the easement, but it's still their property. Why did they choose to put the fence not in the easement area, even though they own that area?
Well, the fence is in what I thought was the property of the house.
But again, the property still goes back there. The property includes all that area. Why did they elect not to fence it in? When you can answer this question, you'll understand an easement. That's why I'm pressing so hard. Why did they elect not to put the fence back there? It's their property. Why didn't they fence it in?
Oh, because that's the easement, I understand that.
And what could happen? The fence could be what? Torn down by the easement holder. It's my property and I elected not to fence it in because whoever has the easement, whoever has the right to access that, has also the right to tear down that fence because it's keeping me from accessing an area that I have the legal right to access. Mike?
What she's trying to understand is like easements can have zone restrictions on the property.
No.
No.
You're
So-
way overcomplicating the thing. An easement is just the right. An easement is not a separate thing from a piece of property. An easement is on your property. Period, and end of discussion from that standpoint. I'm not trying to cut that short, but you need to make peace with that. Because as long as you think of them as two separate things, you don't understand an easement.
So Duke Power can come put a gazebo next to my house.
If it's in the easement,
Okay, so there's stipulations in the easement, there's restrictions.
the easement's not your whole property. The easement, so how wide is this easement right here?
So there's a zone, there are zone restrictions to the easement.
I don't know what zone restriction is. The easement is the easement. Whatever width the easement is, whether it's 3 feet wide or 30 feet wide, the easement is the easement. And that's the area they have the right to access.
It doesn't accommodate that.
They can't move in the bedroom with you. No. Unless that's where their easement is, in which case they can.
That's what she was getting at, is there is some sort of
It's
separation.
going to be clearly drawn on the plat map of your property exactly where the width of that easement. Yes, ma'am.
On 42, where they're widening it right now, the easement went out really far into the neighborhood, and you'll see the fences tore down. But a lot of the easement actually ended at a certain place, and they need that land. So what they've done, my friend has house, they have now bought.
It's called eminent domain. We're going to talk about that as well.
So I'm not getting into, I'm just saying that is what they've done. They couldn't go further, and they needed it, so they paid my friend.
They took the property.
Yes, for a good amount of money. But
They took it.
yeah,
Yeah. Still a
they
taking.
did.
Your friend didn't have a choice. It wasn't like she said, please buy my property. They said, we're taking it, here's your check. Shut up.
Yeah, yeah.
It's called eminent domain.
I would get
The
it.
fact that she liked the check is a happy side benefit, because trust me, had she not liked the check, it would have still been the same result. They would have taken it.
Yeah. Would they still have given him something for it, or?
They give whatever they want to,
Oh, wow.
and you take it. That's why it's called a taking.
Is that what it's? Okay.
Yes.
All right,
And
I'll
North
get it.
Carolina is a quick take state. They want it, they take it. And they write you the check. Whether you like the number or not is up to you. You're mostly not happy. Trust me. Mostly not. We'll talk about eminent domain, chapter 5. Okay, do we understand an easement here?
Yes.
Mhm.
Right. And if you're going to put a fence up, where is the safest place to put it? Before the easement. Can you fence in the whole thing? Of course you can. It's your property. However, you run the risk that if they need access, they will remove that section of the fence. Now, I will tell you, most of the utility companies are not just going to come in there and barrel over your fence unless they absolutely have to, because they don't want to deal with you yelling and screaming at them. Even though they have the legal right, they don't want you on the other end of the phone. Most of the time, they're going to knock on the door and say, hey, you know, we have to bury this line, your fence is in the way, you know, we will take down that section of the fence and we'll put it back up for you. Do they have to do that? No, but they mostly will. Everybody okay with that? Now, what is the primary difference between an easement in gross and an appurtenant easement?
That's forever, we don't.
One lasts how long? Forever, that's the appurtenant easements. And how many pieces of property are we talking about? 2 that are side by side, one's dominant, one's servient. The other lasts how long? A long time, until the easement holder what? Dies, or if it's a company, until they go out of business. Right? And that's when the easement would go away, in an easement in gross. Yes, ma'am.
Now,
Yeah.
what if, like, in the future, they can deliver power without the use of power lines, and they no longer need the use? Does that easement stop, or?
Not automatically.
Okay.
Not automatically. They can relinquish their right to the easement, or they can technically abandon the easement, but abandonment is not your definition of abandonment. Abandonment hasn't happened until a judge has said the easement has been abandoned. So even if they aren't quote-unquote using it, it's still there until a court of law has said it's not there anymore. That makes sense for everybody? Okay? Now, with an easement in gross, there are no dominant properties, because the property's not getting the benefit. There are only what kind of properties with easements in gross? What's the other type? Servient. Because every property is servient with an easement in gross. Because every property is being what? Used. Taken advantage of. How many properties would you estimate in North Carolina, in Raleigh, have easements in gross on them?
All of them.
Every single one. Nobody's living in the dark ages. They all have what? Power. What else?
Cable.
Water. Cable. Gas. Phone service. All of those utilities are accomplished through easements. And guess what? If you say you want to buy a property that doesn't have any easements, you're volunteering to live in the dark ages. Because they can't access the property without them. And you probably still won't find one that doesn't have them, because even if you don't want access to power, does the person on the next property want access to power?
Yeah.
And guess what? They got to go across yours to get to theirs. And they can take that right. They can take that right for the public good. If there's a fire hydrant there, they absolutely have an easement. They sure do. Yes, ma'am. Yes, sir.
So we went from CPL to Progress or Duke, wherever you are. That easement in gross was sold or transferred at the time, so it actually was not, it wasn't terminated by a death or out of business, it was transferred over.
One company was absorbed into the other, so the easements that belonged to the one transferred over to the other. CP&L never actually went out of business. They were simply absorbed into Duke Progress. Yes? Do they try to keep the easements located in the same area? Yes, of course, because obviously we wouldn't want 15 different easements all over. Generally speaking, where are most of these easements going to be located? Either where? Front or back of the property. That's where most of your easements are going to be. Most of your utility easements or easements and gross are going to be located front or back of the property. And they can take them. I just had a new one taken on my property within the last year. I came home and there was orange paint across the front. What new utility is coming to the triangle?
Google Fiber.
Google Fiber. Did they have to ask my permission to get an easement across my property to bury that cable? No, they took it. They don't have the power to take it, but who does have the power to take it? The state does. So Google Fiber simply made a case to the state of North Carolina that it was in the public good that Google have a what? An easement across my property. Because getting an easement across my property, of course, provides them access to all the properties further down the street than me. And they made a case that they needed an easement across my neighbor's property to get access to every subsequent property down the street. And that's how easements are taken by utilities. And I wasn't paid anything for that easement, by the way.
So just want to make sure, so any given day on someone owning the property, is chances are they will wake up and, you know, or have an orange line across their property. Any given day.
Can happen. Especially if there are easements there. Absolutely. Why didn't I get paid? Because they took it. Why would they pay me for something that they got for free?
Normally when they have to cover your actual property or not the easement, I don't know. They would say in some cases, they'll cut a check for.
For taking the property. They're not taking the property. What are they taking? The use. If somebody gives you the milk, you wouldn't worry about buying the cow, would you? There's an old expression about a lot of things about that, right? You get the milk for free, you don't buy the cow, right? Well, an easement is getting the milk for free. There's no need to buy the cow. You got the use, you got the access, you didn't have to have the property. Why would they actually take the property in the case of a street widening if they were doing what? Putting the what? The street.
That's like
The
improvement.
street is going to be on my land. They're going to have to take the property. But that's not access, that's taking the property.
That's also like improvements, like sidewalks.
Sidewalks, they don't take the property. They take an easement. If the town of Cary decides they want sidewalks on my property, they're not going to take the property. They're not going to own the property. Who's going to own the sidewalk? Me. That's why they can bill me for it in an assessment.
That's so crazy.
They put it there and bill me for it because the sidewalk belongs to who? To me. It's on my property. They will take simply an easement. And since the town of Cary takes the easement, therefore who has the right to access the sidewalk? Town of Cary, and since the town of Cary is the public, who has the right to access the sidewalk? The public. So it's my property, but can I tell the public to get off of the sidewalk? No, because the town of Cary has taken an easement on their behalf.
Since it's your property, could you technically every morning go out and put up a fence?
No,
On the sidewalk?
because I cannot restrict the access. I would be billed for it if they would. If they did, I don't have them on my side of the street. They're on the opposite side of the street. But if Cary decided that my street needed sidewalks on both sides, they would come and they would what we call condemn an easement, which means take an easement, and then they would build a sidewalk and bill me for it in the form of a special assessment, which would become a specific what against my property? Lien. Remember we talked about liens this morning. Okay? Everybody good on easements? Understand them? Because you're certainly going to see them on test. Absolutely. So here's a picture that shows property with both types of easements across it. With this appurtenant easement right here. Where is the actual easement? Is the whole thing an easement? Just the front portion, just the back portion? Where's the actual easement? Just the front. This is the easement. Because the only property that can use this section is which one? That property, the dominant property. Now the easement and gross for the railroad trestle back here goes across both properties. So they're both servient in that easement and gross. How long is this easement going to last? Forever. How long is this easement going to last? Until the railroad what? Goes out of business. Closes. Everybody good with that? Easement and gross. Okay? As far as creating easements, I'm going to highlight some of these that are more important for test-taking purposes than others. Easements can be created voluntarily. In the case earlier of me subdividing the land, that's a voluntary creation of the easements. Why did I create the easements when I was subdividing the land? When I had this big piece of property and I subdivided it into four, why did I create the easements? Because we knew they needed them. It made the other properties more marketable, right, by creating easements. I did it because it was invented. Why do developers give Duke Power easements when they're developing property? Because the property's going to be more valuable if they have what? Electricity. So those are all voluntary creations of easements. Involuntary creations or easements are when it's done for you. If you create a piece of property that does not have access to a road, the state will create an easement for you. That is called an easement by necessity. So if you find a piece of what we call landlocked property, you can petition the state of North Carolina in court and say this property is landlocked, it needs access, and the state of North Carolina will find a way and create an easement. It's called an easement by necessity. And it's an involuntary one because the person where you're putting the easement, who owns that property, is not going to want it. But they're going to get it anyway because the state's going to say this property has to have access. And you know where they're going to put the easement? They're going to go back and find when was the land subdivided that created this problem. Because at some point you created the problem. Does that make sense? So even if that was 50 years ago, they're going to go back and they're going to keep going back And they're gonna recombine the property until they finally have access, and then at that point, wherever that subdivision was created that cut off the access, that's where the easement's gonna go. They're gonna find when that was cut into two properties, and that's the property that the easement's gonna end up on. It's called an easement by necessity. It's basically like saying, do-over. Y'all did this wrong the first time, so we're gonna go back and fix it. It's necessary to have access. You all right with that? The next one you need to know is an easement by prescription. When something happens by prescription, and we're going to talk about this more in chapter 5 as well when we talk about something called eminent domain. When something happens by prescription, it means you've been doing it illegally. You've been trespassing. But you've been trespassing for so long, and the rightful owner hasn't corrected you, that you actually go to court and you say, Your Honor, I need to be honest about something. I've been trespassing on this property for 20 years. And the owner is so lazy and so out of it that they either never noticed or never bothered to tell me to stop doing it. And if they suck so much as an owner that they can't even bother to tell me to stop trespassing on their property, then I want the legal right to be on their property. You're asking the court to give you a what? An easement. And guess what? They will. If you can prove that you've been doing it illegally for 20 years and they didn't correct you, then they'll give you the legal right. Because whose job was it to stop it? The owner of the property. Yes, ma'am.
That's just accessing it, not living on it and getting mail at it.
Well, that depends. When we get the eminent domain, you can actually take ownership of the property that way too. Squatters' rights, yeah. But so give me an example of how you might petition for an easement by prescription. I get it, 20 years, but what are you doing? Give me a real world case. Start with an easement. What is an easement? Accessing what? So give me a reason you would access somebody else's property. Go ahead, Jenny.
So, like you and your neighbors, you have a vegetable garden in your backyard, and 3 yards of it is on their property, and you guys have lived there for 40 years, and they've just allowed it to happen.
So they let the vegetable garden just grow on their property, even though it's my garden, I tend it, I use it. They let 3 rows of it are on their property. Does that sound like me accessing somebody else's property? Does it sound like I'm doing it without permission? Mm-hmm. And they've never bothered to say anything to me for how long? 20 years. So I wake up one morning and I decide, you know what? I want to make sure I can always do this. So I go to court and I petition and I say, I've been doing this for 20 years, here's proof, and guess what I'm going to walk out of there with? An easement, which would give me the right to access and use that property for how long? Forever. That's an easement by prescription. Yes, ma'am, Brittany.
And you was doing it illegally, I guess, more than 20 years. How can you prove the court?
How do you prove you've been doing anything for 20 years? Show.
Take pictures?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I didn't say it was going to be easy. I'm not going to make it easy on you. After all, you are doing it what? Illegally, right? So the burden of proof is going to be pretty high. But if you can prove it, there you go. I mean, maybe you've got friends that go up there and say, listen, I've been going over there and helping him pick beans for the last 25 years, every year. And the garden's always been right there. Would that be a way to prove it? There you go. Yes, Mike.
So, is the owner of the property that you trying to kind of claim easement on, does that have to be consistent during that 20-year period?
What do you mean, does it have to be
Does
consistent?
the owner of that property have to be
No.
consistent? Or, okay, so a new owner buys it and you're like, oh no, I better solidify my vegetable garden. Even if it's a brand new owner, you can still go down and apply for the same easement. Okay.
That's exactly right, because the new owner should have done what?
Should have approached you immediately and said, hey, move.
That's exactly right. The new owner should have done a survey, found out where their property line was, why is somebody's garden back here on my property. Again, all of that falls to there is a responsibility associated with owning property.
Okay. And so then could there be like a race if they approach the neighbor and it's like, hey, look, give us your vegetable garden?
And it's an easy race to win. The race is always going to favor the owner of the property.
Okay.
Because the only thing the owner of the property's got to do is go knock on their door and say, get your vegetable garden off of my property.
And then
That's it, right there. There's no more claims of by prescription. The key here is basically the owner is so lazy they've never even bothered to pay attention to what you're doing. Yes, ma'am.
Yeah, if somebody like has unsupervised non-use land, then somebody will just go there, like squatter, build a little house and stay there for like 30 years. The owner doesn't know that somebody's there.
Their fault. You're expected to know. It's your property, it's your responsibility. Don't buy more property than you can monitor.
So then can
I mean,
we-
that's exactly that's the reason these laws exist. Because it is, from the state's perspective, it is dangerous to have people own property who can't be bothered to at least once every 20 years go and see what is going on with their property. That's exactly why these laws exist. Yes,
So then
ma'am.
can the squatter in her scenario that built a little house get an easement to the road?
The squatter in her scenario could actually go even further and claim ownership of the property.
Oh, wow.
They're not asking for an easement, they want the whole shebang. That's called eminent domain. Adverse possession. Yes, ma'am.
Couldn't, well, with her example, couldn't the new owner just, like after they say, you know, they go out there and they say, oh, well, I see that you have a little vegetable garden out here. They go out there and they see her in her garden and say, oh, well, you know, it's fine. You can use it. You
Can
know,
they give their
perfectly fine.
permission?
Yeah. So
Absolutely.
Technically
Because
not
I said that the
trespassing
key is what? You have to have been using it how?
illegally.
Illegally. If they give you permission, that also stops the claim of getting an easement. So they can literally go out there and say, hey, this is my property. You're welcome to keep your garden here, but I'm telling you, if I change my mind, you're going to have to move it. They no longer can claim against you. The whole point is just to protect against absentee, not paying attention owners. As long as the owner's with it and knows what's going on, they're never going to have anything taken from them.
Okay, but I guess what I'm saying is, let's say there was a person, a family that stayed there for 25 years, and they let their neighbors be there for 25 years, use it for 25 years without ever making an issue of it. But the new owner comes in and says, hey, I see you have a garden here, you're perfectly fine to use it. They say, well, wait, we've been doing this for 25 years, so you can't give me permission.
Who did it first? Who did it first?
What do you mean?
Who did it
The owner,
first?
the
No. Who acted first in your case?
The new owner.
There you go. So who wins?
The new owner.
There you go. Simple as that.
Okay. Okay, I got you.
If they want to make that claim, they have to go to court and do it before they have any communication. Because as soon as the owner takes the bull by the horns and says, this is my property, get off, or this is my property, you're here, they've cleared the slate. Now you got to go how long again?
20 more years.
Another 20 years.
Okay.
The whole point, again, you want to get into the weeds and you've missed the major point. The only time something like this applies is if the owner of the property doesn't do anything at all. As soon as the owner takes action, all bets are off.
Okay.
Because the whole reason the law exists is to force the owner to be involved with their property.
Okay.
So as soon as they do, they've cleared off any of this.
Okay.
Okay? Yes?
Does this also work when you have placed a fence on the top of the phone property line?
Same thing.
It's been there for 20 years. and-
Same thing. You could make a claim and say, I legally have the right for my fence to stay there now because I've done it without permission for 20 years. And the way the owner could stop that claim, if they say they don't want you to make that claim, they realize the fence is on their land, they simply send you a certified piece of mail that says, hey, your fence is on my property, I'm okay with it, doesn't bother me, just be aware, it is on my property, so if at any point in time I change my mind, you'll have to take it down. And they could never make a claim because you're not doing it illegally, you're doing it with their what? With their permission, with their knowledge, with their permission. Is everybody okay? So that's an easement by prescription. And then an easement by condemnation is when the state or government is taking an easement, like a utility easement, when they just take it. That's called condemnation, the power of condemnation. As far as terminating an easement, basically the only way an easement can be terminated is in a court of law. All of these might be reasons that a court of law would terminate an easement. But on a test, here's where you have to be careful. You're not a judge. You are not a judge. Because when they present you with on a test and they say, because right here it says abandonment of an easement. Jen asked this question earlier, right? She said, well, what if the power just comes in, through microwaves and we don't need power lines anymore? Is that going to end the easement? What was my answer? It doesn't, not until what happens? A judge. Now, if that happened and Jen wanted to get rid of the easement, what would she have to do? She'd have to go to court, make a case to the judge and say, Your Honor, they have abandoned the easement. Could the judge then decide to end that easement? Yes. On a test, if they present you with that case, Well, the power company stopped using that easement 25 years ago. What's the legal status of the easement? What is the legal status of the easement? It's still there. Still there. And that's what it says. Non-use is not necessarily what? Abandonment. The only way easements go away is if judges say they go away, with the exception of one thing. We'll back up. See where it says merger right here? I want you to star that one. We'll go back to my 4 pieces of property right here. We got an easement on lot 1, we got an easement on lot 2, an easement on lot 3. Everybody remember that? Let's say Brianna buys lot number 3 from Karen. What is an easement? The right to use what? Someone else's property. Someone else's property. Now Brianna owns lot 4 and 3. She's using whose property? Her own. Is there an easement there? No, it's gone. That's called a merger. When the properties are merged, when the same owner owns both of them, the easement goes away because there is no, you're not using someone else's property, you're using whose property? Your own property. Now, if she wanted to sell one of those lots, would she need to recreate the easement? Yes.
Would she have to go back to the county clerk's office and remove the record that was there that was separated?
Only if she wanted to. Nobody makes you do anything. Would she want to? Huh? Yep, there. Everybody good with that? Okay? Don't need to worry about licenses. Encroachments. Encroachments are simple things to explain and hard things to get rid of. An encroachment is an improvement. What do we say an improvement was? Give me the definition of an improvement. Anything that's been constructed on the property in order to do what? Add value to it. So an encroachment is an improvement that goes across a property line, that extends over the property line. Give me examples of some improvements that might extend over a property line. A fence, deck, sidewalks, driveway. All of those things could encroach on the neighboring property. Here's the problem with that. You have placed your improvement on someone else's property, which means they can do what with it? They can remove it.
Yeah.
If your fence is on your neighbor's land and you come home and you got no fence, you don't have an argument with them, you have an argument with yourself. Because you put the fence on somebody else's property. And not only could they take it down, they can send you a bill for the cost of getting rid of it. Because you were what? Encroaching on their property. Does that make sense for everybody? Do not extend improvements across the property line. In order to do that, what do you need to know the location of? The property line. Don't guess. Have a survey done. That's what surveys are for, is to locate the property line and to look and make sure there are no encroachments. Encroachments are bad because they make both properties unmarketable until they're fixed. Both the property that's encroaching and the property that's being encroached on are unmarketable. Yes, sir, Dave.
So, like, if you have a tree that's growing and then the branch is growing out over that property, that is your hazard.
That's an encroachment.
You can be liable.
Everything below, then you cut the branches off even with the property line. Absolutely. Not only the branches. The roots. If they grow into their property, can they cut them? Absolutely. I mean, I had a neighbor across the street from my house just recently. They had to put in a new driveway because tree roots from an oak tree had buckled the driveway. I live in an old neighborhood, big, established trees. And when they came out and they tore up their old driveway, they showed them where the roots were. The roots were coming from a big oak tree on the next door neighbor's property. And before they poured the new driveway, they had the guy, you ever seen one of these ditch witches? It's got like an 8-foot chainsaw on the front end of it. They dug 6 feet in the ground and sliced those roots off, even with the property line. Now what do you think that's eventually going to do to the tree? Of course it's going to kill it. Of course it's going to kill it.
Question. So you cut the roots of the tree down. Now you can demand that they remove the tree because it's a potential hazard to your property. Right?
Potentially, that's exactly right. But the tree's encroaching. I didn't say it was nice. I said it was encroaching. That's what an encroachment is. Anything that crosses the property line.
So they could have asked them to say, hey, listen, because of your tree root encroaching onto my property, I have to get a new driveway, so here's the bill.
No, ma'am, absolutely not.
They can just pick it up.
That's, oh, let me take care of you, honey, No, nobody fixes it for you. You fix it for yourself.
Okay.
It's whose fault was it that the tree roots encroached on their property?
The buyer's fault.
The owners, because they didn't stop that. It's your property, it's your job, and that's the way the law works. So they can fix the problem, but they can't blame it on somebody else after it happens.
Okay.
You know? I'm sorry? They can always remove it. You can always remove it. Is everybody good with this idea of an encroachment? What is the easiest way to fix an encroachment short of removing the improvement? Let's say we poured our driveway and it extends 6 inches over onto our neighbor's property. What is the easiest way to fix an encroachment? See if you've been paying attention to the last hour. Get a what? Well, get a survey. Will locate that it's there, that the problem's there, but how do you fix it? Ask them for a what? An easement. What kind of easement is that going to be? 2 side-by-side properties. What kind of easements would you get? An appurtenant easement. Might you have to pay them for the appurtenant easement?
Yep.
Sure. Would that be cheaper than jackhammering up the new driveway that you just poured? Probably. Probably. But you got to fix the problem. Those are encroachments. Everybody good with that?
Thank you, Travis. Quick question.
Yes.
Fence. If you have a fence, when you purchase a home, your next door neighbor and back door neighbor added on to your fence, but you want to take it down, and they don't want you to take it down, how does that work? Because it's gonna,
Whose fence is it?
it's mine, but it's
Uh-huh.
connected to theirs now.
Are they? Who's encroaching on whose property?
It's on their line, though.
No, there's no way. There's no way that fence is magically on the razor thin edge of a property line. Whose property is the fence on? It's either on yours or theirs. Whose property is the fence on? It's your fence. It's on your property. You are free to do what? Take it down.
So I have to leave theirs standing even though it's not.
On their own property.
Support. It's
You
not
can
gonna
take
have
that.
support in my fence.
You can. I'm sorry.
The support, you know, once I take it down.
That's their problem. They're the ones that installed a fence that didn't have a post at the end of it. Isn't that what they did? I mean, you think about it, you have to be honest. See, we all want to be children sometimes. Hey, they're my fence. No, they took their own fence down. You're the one that riding. I mean, if you jumped on somebody's back, piggyback, and they fell down, you wouldn't be like, you didn't hold me up. You're like, fool, get off my damn back. You know, like, and that's the same thing that just happened with the fence, right? You know, they're piggybacking on your mess. You can take it down. You know, that's the reality. It's a harsh reality. I just had it happen. My neighbors behind me, the house behind me just sold. My yard is fenced in, and the house that backs up to mine did not have a fenced-in backyard, but they had yards on either side that were fenced in. And apparently their buyers wanted a fenced backyard. So they got the brilliant idea that they would just buy like 10 feet of fencing and just connect, you know, like from their house out to the house beside them, and their house out to the other side, and then from, you know, the one neighbor's fence back to my fence, and the other neighbor's fence back to my fence. Voila, they got a fenced backyard. So they bought like 20 feet of fencing and they fenced their whole backyard in. Well, the buyer, and I saw when they did it, and I don't care. It doesn't bother me because my yard's fenced and my fence is on my property. Not only it bothers me, I'm not, you know, I wasn't going to say anything to them, but their buyer did a survey. And what do you think the survey found? Encroachments at all 4 corners, right? Everywhere that they crossed over their property line onto the next to connect to a fence, they had an encroachment. And so the buyer said, well, we're not buying it until you fix the encroachment, until you get some kind of permanent permission. So, you know, I get a letter from their real estate broker saying, well, would you sign this letter saying you're okay with the fence being there and you will never make them take it down?
Can't you charge them?
What do you think I said to that? No, I will not sign such a thing. I will be happy to write you an email saying I understand that your fence is encroaching on my land and that it's okay for now, but if I change my mind, I can make you take it down, and you better hope that's enough. Or you can buy an easement from me, one of the two. Now, it ended up that the buyers were okay with the letter saying I understood it was okay. Truly, I am okay with it. I mean, there's no reason. I'm not going to take my fence down. I have dogs. I mean, I'm not going to, I have no reason to take my fence down, but at the same time, if I sold my, here's what I want to be clear about. If I sold my house, should the next buyer have the right to take that fence down if that's what they want to do? And should they have to be concerned about what it does to the neighbor's property who were taking advantage in the first place? No.
Should they give you money because they usually roll their fence?
I mean, if I wanted to be a terrible, sort of like relationship with the neighbors, and yeah, I mean, I could probably press that issue, but I'm just not concerned about that. All I wanted to be clear about is, I understand what you're doing, but that's not a permanent solution. Yes, sir.
So now I understand why Easement is so stupid to see those fences
With a little bit between
a
them.
little bit of space between them.
It's actually the safest thing to do, because you want to make sure that your fence is clearly inside your property.
If you wanted a privacy fence versus just a barrier fence or whatever.
Right, makes sense. Okay, we good on encroachments? All right. So before we, I want to introduce the idea of taxation, and then we're going to actually get into the first batch of math in the class. Okay. So I'm going to go through just a couple of slides that we've got that are a lecture about taxation, and then we'll take a break before we do the math and give you time to catch your breath and say prayers or whatever you need before you do math. So this whole chapter is about limitations, encumbrances, and the first thing we talked about there was a limitation was a lien, right? This is the grandfather of all liens, because this is the one that always exists, the property tax lien. Every property in the state of North Carolina, unless it is falls into a specialized category where there are no property taxes associated with it, every property is going to have an annual property tax bill. And that property tax bill is going to be a lien against the property, which means the right to do what? To foreclose on the property if that bill is not paid. Now, you need to know that the Machinery Act, and I've never thought of a trick about how to remember that. The Machinery Act is the law that governs property taxes in North Carolina. The Machinery Act says that North Carolina will tax property based on its market value. We use what's called a market value approach in North Carolina. In other words, whatever the property would sell for, that's the tax basis for the property. Some states don't use that. Some states use like 50% of market value as a tax basis, or 75% of market value. North Carolina uses the full market value of the property. It's called ad valorem taxes. Ad valorem just means by value. That's all it means. It's Latin, it means by value or based on value. North Carolina uses an 8-year system of valuing property. Not an 8-year system of taxes. They tax you every year. But an 8-year system of valuing property. So when you look up, how many of you have ever heard the tax value of a property, that expression? My property's tax value is this. Most of you probably encountered that. The tax value of a property is set by the county where the property is located in. They send an appraiser out to the property to visit the property and come up with an estimate of the property's market value. They estimate what would a buyer pay for this property if it was on the market right now. That number gets locked in for 8 years. So the tax value of the property is going to stay the same for how long? 8 years, and then in 8 years they're going to repeat the process and do it over again. Is everybody okay with that? Now that does not mean your tax bill will stay the same for 8 years, because they can change the rate yearly. The rate that they're charging you taxes could change yearly, but the taxable value or assessed value is going to be locked in for a period of 8 years. Is everybody good with that? Generally speaking, counties that neighbor each other try to stay on different cycles because they all use the same appraisers to go around and come up with the value, so they don't want to all be doing it all at the same time. So usually, like for example, Wade County, Orange County, Johnston County are all on different cycles. Durham County, Wade, Durham, Johnston, and Orange are all on different years, because that way they're not all trying to have all their properties revalued all at the same time. We are now, the last Wade County revaluation was in 2015. So it is technically locked in now until 2023. But what I will tell you is that number's not going to last 8 years. And so this is the other thing you need to understand. You need to understand this horizontal adjustment. So halfway through the cycle, if the county decides that property values have changed a lot, substantially, in that 4-year period, let me ask you a question. Have property values changed a lot in Wake County since 2015?
Yes.
Yes. So do you think Wake County is going to probably want to do something at the earliest possible opportunity about those values? Which way have property values gone in Wake County since 2015? Up, tremendously. So, rather than go to every property and come up with an individual value for every property, one time during that cycle, halfway through, which would be how many years? 4 years, the county is allowed to take what's called a horizontal adjustment. Here's what a horizontal adjustment looks like. I'm going to use you people. If this was a Weight Watchers meeting, we'd pull a scale up here and we'd do what with every single one of you? We'd weigh every one of you, and you'd each get your own number. That's the octennial reappraisal, because everybody gets weighed into it. Could some people have weight? Could some people have lost weight and some people have gained weight? Yes. So some might go up in value, some might go down in value. Let's say next week's meeting, we don't weigh everybody, we just go, you know what, the class lost 3% this week. So what will we do with everybody's weight? Take it down by 3%. That's a horizontal adjustment. It's an across-the-board, one-size-fits-all change for every property in the whole county. So when Wake County takes its horizontal adjustment in 2019, which way do you think they're going to adjust? Up. I've heard 12 to 15%. 12 to 15%. Which is a realistic reflection of what property values have done in that period of time. Here's the difference. When they do the octennial reappraisal, are there going to be some neighborhoods where property values have gone up 100%? And are there going to be some other neighborhoods where property values haven't gone up at all, or maybe even have gone down? See, that can happen in an octennial reappraisal, but that can't happen in a horizontal adjustment. Horizontal adjustment, everybody gets the same change across the board. Same percentage adjustment.
And octennial is
Each property individually, whereas horizontal adjustment is straight across the board change. How do they? They have magic fairy dust that they waver. I don't know. What they do is they look at sales data. They look at sales data and see what average prices are looking like across the county during that time frame. They're going to do another, they are required by law to do an octennial reappraisal every 8 years. So even if they do the horizontal adjustment, that means 4 years later they still have to do the octennial reappraisal.
There was a crash.
Mm-hmm.
And in 2027, everything within the encumbrances was horizontal.
Right. I've never seen a horizontal adjustment down. Yeah, generally speaking, when they step in to do a horizontal adjustment, it is to adjust upward. Okay, everybody good with that? Good with this idea? Now, this is the taxation timetable in North Carolina. This timetable tells you when the taxes become a lien against the property and when that lien can be foreclosed on. It says here, when do my 2018 property taxes become a lien on the property?
January 1st.
So they already what? They already are a lien. Here's the interesting thing. What is a lien? The right to foreclose. Well, why can they foreclose? Because I owe them what? Money. Look at what it says here happens in September. What becomes available? So here's what you're telling me. You already have a lien on my property for an amount of money we don't even know yet. Only the government can get away with something like that. And that's exactly how it works. My property taxes are already a lien against my property. Even though and if you say, well, how much is the lien for? What's my answer going to be? I don't know. Don't have the bill yet. Bill's not gonna come out till September, but they're already a lien against my property. Here's why that's important. These liens are appurtenant. That means they go with the what? Property. So if you buy a house right now, this time of the year, is there a property tax lien associated with it? And when's the bill gonna come out? September. So when the bill comes out, how much of that bill is the new owner gonna owe? All of it, because the lien's attached to what? To their property, and if they don't pay it, whose property's gonna get foreclosed on? Theirs. So what would you suggest they probably better do at closing with the seller? Get the seller to do what? Pay it, but you don't know how much. Say that again, Martina. Martina said she would take last year's bill. She actually said she'd take last year's bill and add a little bit to it. But what we do in the real world is we take last year's bill. We prorate it based on last year's bill. Because isn't last year's bill the best indication of what this year's bill is going to be? And that's what we would do. And we would have the seller pay their fair share up to, because that's fair, right? If we close today, doesn't the seller owe some taxes? The problem is we don't know how much they owe. So we would prorate it based on the same time period for last year. And who would the seller give that money to? To the buyer, so that the buyer has it to do what with? Pay the bill when the bill comes out. It's like going to lunch with your friend and having them put the whole thing on their credit card. So what do? You give them cash for it, or you give them a Venmo, excuse me, you Venmo them for it. Same thing. It's called prorated. We're going to learn how to do the math of that too. Everybody good with that?
Are there other options? Like say, the new owner, can the new owner pay and then say, hey, I paid this, here's the bill, and ask the old owner to give him the money that he paid us would have been his portion? Is there other options than just that option?
There's whatever you want to do. None of the options make sense though other than that option. What are you, so you're saying you want to wait till the bill comes out?
Well, are there other options other than going back and seeing what they paid last year and getting your amount from
The option is to do whatever you want to do as the buyer. I'm telling you there's a million options. But I'm saying, what option are you proposing?
Meaning what I'm asking?
Yeah.
She's asking if the seller pays the bill.
The seller can't pay the bill.
He doesn't know what it is. No,
There is no bill.
If I'm buying the house from the seller.
Right.
And we don't know what it is at that time.
Yep.
What would be the easiest way?
The way I just explained.
Okay. But
Well,
there's more options.
Yeah, oh, there's any option. Sounded to me like what you wanted to do is wait for the bill to come out and then go back to the seller and get what they owe.
Yes.
Good luck.
But
Whose
can you
problem?
do that?
Sure you can. They're in the Dominican Republic somewhere on vacation. Whose property does the lien attach to? I ain't trusting them with the money. I want it now. And I'd rather take the risk that I might lose $20, $30, $100 right
That's
now.
what I was saying,
Then-
because of that.
Yeah, but see, but the problem is you're going to be worried about 100 and you're not going to get any. Because when you contact them and say, hey, pay up, they're going to be like, who you? See what I'm saying? That's what I'm trying to get you to. I'm trying to get you the practicality of it. The truth is you can do whatever you want to. But the reality is that it's the buyer who's ultimately going to be responsible for it because it's their property the lien attaches to. Yeah. Yes, ma'am, Jim.
Unless the seller already paid it after September 1st.
If it's after September 1st, we're going to know exactly how much the
Right.
seller owes and we're going to collect the exact amount. Or the seller could have paid the whole bill.
And then the buyer would owe him that.
And the buyer would pay back their fair share. Exactly right. But most closings happen before, because obviously the tax bills don't come out until September, most closings happen at a point in time before the bill is even available. We all good with that? Now look at that last date on there. When does it say that that property can be foreclosed on? When are the taxes actually delinquent? January what? 6th of the following year. So my 2018 property taxes become delinquent if they're not paid by January 6th of next year. Everybody good on that? That's the point in time at which the county could begin foreclosure proceedings if they wanted to. Most people pay it before December 31st. We'll learn that that's a tax deductible item. When you talk about income taxes, your property taxes are a tax deductible item. And so in order for them to count as a tax deduction in this year, most people will pay them before December 31st so that they can take the tax deduction in that calendar year. But technically, you could pay them early January. Everybody good? So, let's talk about math when we come back from the break. I'm going to blank that out. And let's take, let's be back at, say, 10 minutes till 3. And then we're going to start with that percentage introduction. What? You can do it now. Oh, that's fine. I can do it now. Okay.